initially, we kind of failed to set an objective for that survey. You know, I mean, we didn't really.
Well, we wanted to see what they would,
I had just made a
what
suggestion
grants.
to see if they would do it for free or how much it would cost to have ISU do. I've seen other cities that have done that, and they're great surveys, and they don't only just send it out to tenants and landlords. I think they send it out to everybody in the city, and I don't know if any of that was covered when they did a survey, it's probably been, I'm gonna say at least 5 years ago, maybe longer, about the housing needs in town.
Yeah,
Was any of that covered back in that?
That was a community-wide thing, wasn't it, Chris? When we went out and had, well, you have them about every 4 or 5 years, or
Comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive
Comprehensive plan, yeah.
Was any of that covered in that?
I don't think it was.
There are certain amounts of it that has the housing needs and everything else, and we're actually going through that. You should have that updated version here for too long, right? We just
Correct.
kinda went through that, so.
I think it's gonna be next
Yeah,
year.
there's a housing needs assessment that they do
Yeah.
as part of that.
Yeah,
And a lot of it says we need more low to moderate
right.
rental income and more of this, more of that, but, you know, you gotta kinda balance that, so. Can I say something? I know I'm not really part of the committee, but
Absolutely.
can I speak my mind?
actually, as mayor, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I let the committee members do their thing, so.
Make an
I talked to him,
exception.
so, Chad, at the last council meeting, you came up and you talked about lawsuits and everything else, about cities getting sued, about having rental codes. Is your heart in this? Or is it your intent that we're just gonna sue the city when it's all said and done? I'm just asking, and you can be honest if it's a yes or no.
That was, I thought, pertinent information that Orange City had gotten theirs struck down on the administrative search warrant and other violations. I thought the city would be interested in knowing that prior to proceeding.
Oh, and that's
If I was
good.
wrong in that, then you explain how.
No, you're fine. I just wanna know. I just, if you had ulterior motives and then we're not trying to produce productive things here, I just wanted to know.
Well, in viewing our proposed 148 and theirs, 148 is far, far more invasive.
Well, this is what I want to get back. Now I want to jump to the next step. I think this, in my personal opinion, I think this whole draft thing needs to get scrapped. I want it to be simplified. The only thing I care about, and I don't know what the other ones feel, but what I care about is I want to know that you got a safety checklist checked off for 3 departments. Fire alarms work, GFIs work, and that is sanitary. That's the only 2 things I care about. How simplified can that be?
The only question that I have, Mr. Mayor, is the last thing you said, and it's sanitary. Once again, the people who are.
When it's leased, how about that?
Oh, when it's leased, understood.
So if you
Absolutely.
cleaned out and a new person came in, you could check off, yes, this thing is free of vermin.
Yes.
All of my safety checklists are done. That's not too much, is it?
No, that's not at all true.
That's what I mean, all of this, I think, is, we're getting way,
That's pretty similar to Palos.
way too,
Palos was.
and I know Blake and Chief,
pages.
you're hating me for this, but I do not want this to be complicated, I never wanted it to be complicated, it needs to be simple. I don't want anybody to have it affect their livelihood, so,
Kind of like the golf cart deal.
kinda like the golf, I'm still the only one that voted no on
I know.
that. So,
Well,
that's my opinion.
the,
What you guys want to do with it, and I told Bethany I was gonna bring it up, so.
Well, and
She
that's
had
what
to
I,
pick up the
that's what I
pieces.
had Blake make that list last time for what he is thinking is going to be checked on this stuff, and we need to go through that list.
So who's getting, is he still gonna come in and check this, or is this something that we're gonna self-survey on ourselves?
Personally, I think it's a self-survey.
Yeah, well, that's simple enough. I mean, I would, personally, everybody, or I've always cleaned up, if somebody leaves a house dirty, first of all, they get charged for their deposit, and then you go in there and clean it up. So, I can't imagine somebody moving into a house that's not clean. The new renter.
And I get it, but it's
But I
a
suppose it's
simple
possible.
question to ask.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
but
check
yeah.
in the box then.
and smoke
Does the hot
detectors
water
are-
work? So,
but even before that, possibly, Sir John Watson, you are
I'm Doug
Oh,
Hurl.
I'm sorry.
City
This is the city attorney.
I only speak when spoken to.
Dallas, Lynch, Dallas, which one is it?
Lynch comes first.
Lynch.
Both dead, so it doesn't matter.
So it's Herman, Corkery, and who?
Whoever.
So, wouldn't it be pertinent to see what he thinks about some of the things that he has, A, investigated and or read and or heard?
Well, I can speak with a number of hats. I can speak as a landlord, used to be landlord. City manager, used to do that. A city attorney who works with an awful lot of cities with rental codes. Some really a lot of work, really go after it, others less stringent. And I can comment on this Orange City case too. You know, as a landlord, those of you who are landlords, I feel your pain. I decided years ago not to do that anymore because I was a landlord during the time when anybody and everybody could get a mortgage. All the people who shouldn't. That left very few people in the rental market who don't do a very good job taking care of things, putting holes in walls, doing all that kind of stuff. And no matter how much you try to have a nice place, there's always the other landlords too. I've known other landlords, and I lived in Monticello for years, and there's a couple I can think of. They would provide the very, very, very bare minimum. Slumlords, as they're called, right? And those houses were always a problem. And the tenants that lived there didn't really have much choice because that's what they could afford and that's where they lived. City of Clinton, we do an awful lot of work, and they have a rental code very, very much enforced. A lot of code enforcement work. Sometimes it seems like it maybe goes a bit too far, you know, from an outside looking in person. The key things like the mayor mentioned, I guess that, you know, when are certain things required? You know, hardwired smoke detectors, for example. Redoing an old house to put those in can be kind of tricky and expensive. You know, but putting them into new rental properties should probably always happen. Fire extinguishers, safe stairs in and out, having no holes in the roof, all the things that seem like common sense are important. Having landlords self-check, if you've got good quality landlords, good people, works fine. If they're just gonna check the box and turn it in because nobody's ever gonna look, is that good or not? You know, that's kind of what you have to weigh out. I guess if you thought about that, if the landlord says, I've done these things, turn it in, and the tenant moves in and starts complaining to the city that there's no smoke detectors, or they don't have batteries, there's no fire extinguisher, then are there penalties, or what do you do in that case, if we're gonna go that route? The Orange City case was, in my opinion, pure and simple about the administrative search warrant process. The suit was, you know, you're looking at some Supreme Court law, the U.S. Supreme Court, and an Iowa Constitution. What do you have to have for a search warrant, criminal versus kind of civil in this case? And I think even this court, which is out on the other side of the state, so it really doesn't mind any other judicial districts at all, but it's something other courts would look at. This court looked at some Minnesota cases and said, I think there needs to be some more criteria. It can't just be that our code says we have a right to be in there. So this court established or adopted, if you will, the Minnesota court's standards, you know, that put the tenant and the owner on some notice. So basically, typically, if you get an administrative search warrant for a lot of cases, I can put it together with code enforcement or for other reasons. I go to the judge and I get it, and I come to the property. You don't even know I'm coming. That's called ex parte. I'm doing it without you knowing about it. This court said you really shouldn't do that absent emergency circumstances. There's got to be a reason. If you go to the judge to get an ex parte search warrant, there better be a reason to support it. The tenant can have a hearing. They can have an advocate there. They can ask for restrictions on the warrant. If there's going to be police there, you need to let them know and why. This timing and scope should be reasonable. What are we looking for? If we want to have a code enforcement inspection, are we going to go look at the smoke detectors and the fire extinguishers and the water heater and the furnace? You know, is that stuff we're looking at? Or are we going in every closet and looking in every box and under the bed and, you know, going further than we need to? So to me, this court doesn't at all say you cannot have a rental code. It doesn't say you can't require inspections. it says that if you're gonna have an inspection, you can't do it by way of an administrative search warrant where nobody has a chance to be heard before you do it, okay? I would think a city Vinton size, and I don't know the makeup of the population in the housing as well as I should, maybe city of Owine, for example, the most per capita single-family rental housing, I think, in the state, and they've got significant code enforcement too. You know, you gotta gauge kind of what you might need in your community. I don't think you jump in with, you know, both feet deep into the full rental code that Clinton has. You can always make it more stringent if it looks like you need to. I think you need to look at why now? What are we worried about? Are we worried about just the basic safety and needs, which is your fire extinguishers, I suppose, your smoke detectors, your windows that open and close, that kind of stuff. Deciding on what those basic things are is where I think rental codes are good, especially if you think you have a problem. There must be some kind of thinking there's a problem or you wouldn't be talking about it.
Anyone correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been suggested that our own police department came out of houses and said they thought they should go home and take a shower. As being a mayor for a year or two, that's kind of phony to me. And even the young plumber and the electrician say, well, I said, you guys actually, if it's that bad, don't go in. Call the owner and tell him to clean it up. And, you know, everybody says, God, that Watson, he's a hard ass. They actually have the availability to perform just little things like that that would improve tremendously without having a policeman and or a building inspector go and inspect that building. Why not go, as you say, why not address the issue with the guy that owns it? But that is where the rub comes. We have no avenue for that here. The police can complain, the electricians and plumbers can complain, even I can complain, but there is no avenue, so some type of authority needs to be given to someone.
I mean, you can have a rental code that requires certain things
Right.
to be compliant, and you can require rental properties to be registered, so that we know where they are, we know who the owner is. There can be, you know, a simple registration fee. It's more about that background knowledge. Then you can have, here's how you have to maintain it. And if, you know, you wouldn't have to have any inspections. You could have the landlords doing their own thing, but then have penalty provisions that could be anything from a civil penalty to a revocation of the occupancy permit. You know, it can't be rented. You know, one of the penalties, if you continue to violate and it's so bad, we can pull your permit and that can't be rented for a period of time as a punishment. That happens in some communities too. And the good landlords have zero objections to that ever. The ones that have more problem properties don't like that. Because, you know, you're taking away the rental income if you suspend, and that's usually kind of, to be honest, that's a last resort. I don't see that happening a lot, but we do it plenty in Clinton. But again, I'm gonna guess some of their mediocre rentals would be the very worst ones here, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You know, the bad ones there are beyond bad.
So have you actually defended the cities in situations that have occurred through the rental policy and?
Yeah. Yep, I go to court in Clinton at least every month on cases. You know, one of the other attorneys does some work in Independence. So I get some are international property maintenance codes, some are rental codes. So there's a little bit of both going on, but in Clinton is where most of my experience is on the rental code. And I've talked to them about this Orange City case too, because we have got search warrants kind of in the traditional fashion. Put it together, we've got all these pictures of the outside, there's broken windows, the steps are falling off the back of the house, there's all this exterior evidence. And then tenant reports maybe that I can't get the landlord, I haven't had hot water for 3 months. So we have those kind of facts, get the search warrant, and then go to the house and then condemn it and make people leave. And so we definitely do some of that, but we also go and enforce civil penalties and that kind of thing. And and usually your magistrates, it wouldn't be the same here, I don't think. And it's maybe a little side note, but in Clinton, the magistrates live in Clinton. The bigger up judges don't. So if you go to court with one of the district court judges, they're less likely to give the same punishment as the magistrates, because the magistrates live there and know how bad some of these properties are. Here, I think your magistrates come in from out of town. I don't know that we've got any here that live here. So,
Well, outside of town.
yeah, not that they wouldn't take it serious, but
Isn't Aaron Olds out? He's a magistrate, isn't
he is.
he? Kevin?
Is he close by?
Just outside
Okay.
of town.
Um,
But yeah, that's where.
Anyway, every county's every set of magistrates is a little different. Some are much more lenient in the penalties they may want to impose. Others are like, no, this is, maximum penalty is usually $6,500. In Clinton, we get that every time, and a lot of times, if there's things to be fixed, that's the penalty, but almost, let's say 80% of it gets waived if you correct these deficiencies within a reasonable period of time. The city looks at it too, we're spending money. By the time we end up in court with a landlord or with the property owner, we've spent money. And the code enforcement people have, sent notices of violation and set up inspections and tried to meet with people, done all those things. And, so there's been a lot of efforts before we ever get to court. I will say too, before the administrative search warrant ever comes into play, code enforcement always tries to set up an inspection, just voluntary. It's time for, in a lot of cities, they'll have annual inspections or every 3-year inspections. Or because of complaints from tenants or known violations, like, hey, you need to put a new water heater in and we need to set an inspection so I can come see it. And then hopefully people show up for those.
I would ask the question then, most of us have some older properties. I for one have older ones. You have many older ones. You've got newer ones. Mr. Hamling and his wife have newer ones. The old ones, as someone just said, if you had to direct wire, fire alarms, oh my God, it cost a fortune in an older house with plaster and lath. So have you ever been involved in a situation like that?
There's been a lot of arguing about that in Clinton again, for those reasons. And the council, that was kind of part of their code, and they backed off of that a bit. But where it might come into play with the older homes is if it's a rental, registered rental, and it's occupied, and it's got the correct permits, but then it gets the permit revoked for some reason. Or it sells and becomes a single-family house, and then goes back to being a rental, then it would have to be compliant. But that was the rule, and I want to say the city council in Clinton revoked that because of a lot of complaints about that. So, and I think property owners have tried, and I don't know much about these, but there's some that are, you wire it in a certain fashion, and then it sends a signal around to the other ones, Bluetooth signal of sorts. I don't know if they're any good or not. I know the code enforcement people don't like them there, but so that has been the biggest thing we've argued about, that requirement.
So as for your older homes and stuff, if we allowed the battery ones in there, are you guys gonna self-police those places to make sure the batteries are good in those?
Well, I think it was you that suggested that we should have an inspection when if it hasn't been inspected for a year and someone leaves.
Right. When the meter changes names, that's what I said. When we started this, that was the first meeting, I said, we're not gonna go into places unless
It's in.
a tenant complains.
Okay.
If a tenant complains down here, then that gives us the right to possibly go in there.
With
Or
common sense.
talk to the landlord
Right.
and say, okay, the tenant doesn't have hot water. What are you gonna do about it? And give you a certain amount of time to get that taken care of. If it's not taken care of, then a municipal fine or something like that. But, that's what I said. I don't want Blake to start going into every rental property in this town until, because this is all, everybody's grandfathered in as far as I'm concerned right now. But when the meter changes names on, I guess, so I don't know if anybody pays utilities. Okay, if the mail changes names, then then you get your chance to go in, paint, clean up, whatever. If he goes in and sees, water heater vented wrong or something like that, he says, okay, we got an issue here. Would you please take care of it?
So are we gonna go back to doing self-policing, or are we gonna have Blake going in and do this?
So, just listen to this, so.
I would rather go with the mayor's suggestion that
But
we self-police ourselves. I don't really think there's an issue in this town as bad as what.
I don't think so either.
And if we do that, and I put smoke detectors in, I don't know how many smoke detectors I buy, but when somebody leaves, the smoke detectors become personal property somehow, or the batteries are out. And I have it in my lease that they are responsible for putting batteries in. Some people just don't care, they just don't get it. The smoke alarm goes off, they'd rather it burn up than have it go off when they're burning their toast.
Or they grab a broom and knock it off.
So,
Knock it off.
again, I think every one of us renters put smoke detectors in. Fire extinguishers, I do not put fire extinguishers in. I don't know that I want them staying in the house. I'd rather that they get out instead of trying to put the fire out themselves. If that's a requirement, I'll buy it, but I'll guarantee you it'll be missing. It'll be in the car or some other place, so.
It's hard to clean that stuff out of carpet too,
yeah,
because they
so-
shoot them off inside.
So, but again, common sense, if the water heater, if somebody's not replacing the water heaters because they don't have hot water, I can't imagine.
But that's what I'm saying,
I just can't believe that's happening, but obviously it is.
It has in this town.
It is.
It has.
And,
And it still does, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't go into that many houses in town anymore. I used to all the time,
Yeah.
but I don't anymore, but I'm sure it's still happening.
and
So, and that's what I say. That
if they
is,
come down and complain to you, you call the tenant landlord,
right,
and if they don't fix it within 24 hours or 48, whatever,
right, but that's what I say.
Then
If
it's game
somebody
on.
moves out and you get your chance to clean everything up, like the people last meeting that have to clean up all the wonderful stuff, you get your chance to clean that up and then call Blake, say, hey, come look at this, do you see anything wrong?
I just
Within
keep Blake
reason.
out of this. I don't see the need for.
Well, John even mentioned there's no avenue for the people to do anything. It has to be policed somehow.
The upside is we need to have it done. The downside is that most people who are in the situation where they can only afford $312 a month and have the utilities involved, they wouldn't say anything against their landlord because they're scared to death. There's nowhere else to go.
I'll argue that all day long. They
Absolutely.
are the most obstinate you've ever seen because they expect everything. I had a plumber on site go out and have a cigarette. She called Blake and said that I had an open wall with plumbing issues. And I said, the plumber's outside having a cigarette. I'm standing right here. So, you have no idea.
Oh,
Sure you do, sure you do.
So at a minimum, the safety checklist that you guys sign off on or whatever you wanna do, I mean, you guys have to figure this out, these are just my thoughts. That if you guys wanna self-perform it, but I do think at a new lease that Blake needs to have the opportunity to come in and look at it. Just,
And that's the entire structure or the unit to be rented?
I would assume the room unit to be rented, I'm not after everything, so.
One thing I'd throw into, I mean, some of these things are very easy. Is there a smoke detector doesn't work? If there's fire extinguishers, I get both sides of that too. And that's come up in other cities. But the way of the furnace is plumbed, or the water heater is vented, or the check valve, some of those things that maybe not all landlords know. Where,
That's what I'm getting
where
at, is.
maybe more of a code enforcement eye would be checking those things than the kind of more day-to-day things.
I would just think you need a time limit, so you guys 15 days, 20 days, because we're gonna wanna get them turned.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I think
No, I
we're ready.
understand that. I mean, I guess that's part of the responsibility of the landlord to call down here and say, hey, I'm gonna be cleaning this, it's going to be rented within this amount of time, we need to have Blake come look at it.
'Cause most of those things, as insurance is getting tighter and tighter, I'm getting a list from my insurance agent with the same things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
So your insurance required it.
so as long as I'm trying to keep my insurance, we're already doing those things.
The tenant can give permission, I mean, if the tenant's mad about something, they can call Blake and say, come in here. They have a right to let them in, except for areas they don't have a right to be in, you know.
So it actually written down, once a year check, complaints, read a new lease. Those are just the three I just wrote down. They have to be that way?
So inasmuch as we represent a group, should we get together with the group and propose these things
I
and
think-
get
I
consensus?
think you should, I really think you should.
What do you think,
'cause-
what do you think,
I think
to
most
protect
would
your
prefer
properties
that.
and protect the people that are paying you revenue? What is that good list that, something simple that they can come through, you know? Even if you have to go get a new water heater, you're supposed to come down here and pull a permit, and he has to come inspect it anyhow, so he's gonna have access to it at some point. But, you know, anything, you know, you're supposed to pull permits on those replacement things, you know? Some people do, some people don't. Again, that's another self-policing thing, you know? I truly believe that Vinton's full of trustworthy people, and until I get proved otherwise.
Do you have a similar list for insurance, for insuring rental property?
I would say that there's, I mean, smoke detectors, just two means of egress.
I have another insurance inspection this year. Are you guys saying you've never had an insurance inspection? I get them like every
Oh,
2 years.
I've had fuses need replaced with circuit breakers, you know, we've got cement that needs fixed in the driveway. My list was lengthy, but if there's that and it's 2 pages long, that's at least somewhere better to start than a 25-page deal. And that's a lot more similar than like City of Palo is about 2
And
pages.
railings or,
Your carrier
So-
registers.
So literally, the last meeting when I started, we're hearing like, I need no 3 doors to get out of a bedroom to get to here, and like this, I was back here going like this to Bethany, I'm like, no.
And it got confused when you add search warrants, background checks.
Yeah.
That becomes police department issues versus
Right.
rental.
Now, as,
My suggestion is, that's where I would start. Now, if you don't come to agreement with that and with the committee,
Have you
And
guys
Doug
had a
can
meeting
look at
with
it
the
too.
rest of the people since we started
Not
this?
since we started, no.
Okay.
But we could probably get together pretty easy, I think.
So, Bud, is that your intention, to have a code like that?
who's speaking, what was that?
Me.
What's that?
That's your intention, to have a simplified
I want
code
it
like
simple.
that?
I want it simple that safety and sanitary, when it's at least the first, how's that? So,
We've just gotten a different gist of what is wanted by
yeah,
the
I
people
think
appointed
it
and
got
out of.
overly complicated.
Okay.
And as soon as it got overly complicated, it wasn't going to work at all.
can I also propose some sort of direct communication with the police department when we come across drug paraphernalia of somebody where they're not supposed to be, trespassing issues? Because I have difficulties with that.
I don't think there's any problem with that, is there, chief?
I would love to have.
What
a-
issues have you had? Drew?
I've called several times down and said, I've got video of people stealing bicycles, does anybody want to come and see it? Nobody's ever called.
What made you
I
report
walk
that?
in and do my inspections and I get drug paraphernalia on the table, I take a picture and say, does somebody want to come? I get nobody.
Yeah, you just destroy those yourself. I mean, we can't, who we can charge?
That's exactly what I was told, pick it up, throw it away.
Yeah.
So, but I can't get anybody out of their lease for smoking or use of drugs unless I have a police report. And so if I call, if there's marijuana smoke, I can smell it and I wanna get them out of the lease. I need the police to come and file and knock on the door, get in, look at it in order to get that, cause otherwise the judge is gonna throw it out.
Yeah, I don't think that's not an issue. Have you had an issue with that?
Yeah. And I mean,
Not-
I've
not
had,
coming?
and I've told Bethany last time, city employees too, like we've had iVinton installed and they said, you wouldn't believe what we just saw at the last few. There's drugs out on the table all the time, like, you're a city employee, you should be a mandatory reporter
And this
of
is where the self-policing thing comes in. And we should be doing it as city employees too, is
No,
making sure we're policing
I
that.
agree.
Same
but-
thing with the signs in the right of ways. Everybody should be policing that.
But
So,
we gotta, again, we gotta make sure that we're, following the rules as well. We can't violate, people's, privacy. We can't just go kick a door in,
But like,
with what he has. I mean,
Can you guys?
ask our city attorney.
it's just,
If
So
the landlord is in
Ask
there
our city
legally.
attorney.
See, during a regular inspection, because I inspect every month, if I come across drug paraphernalia, all I'm told is pick it up and throw it away. I don't wanna touch that crap. I don't wanna have to deal with it, but that's.
Get
my-
rubber gloves.
What? Let's
But
stop
it's-
that problem.
But
and that's where it seems to get turned on the landlords. So we had a
What are we gonna do with it?
But we had a tenant who got ran off the road outside of our property by another tenant. She called the police department. They told her to talk to her landlord to police the other people.
Okay. I'm
And so
not
like
familiar
that,
with one.
it always gets thrown back on the landlord to police the property in these types of scenarios, or throw away the paraphernalia or whatever. When we try to find ways to get people legally out of their apartment, it's hard. Everything, all the burdens in their court.
Well, as far as the drug person, if you're finding that, and you don't, there's nothing we can do with that. Who are we gonna charge? What do you want us to do? We can throw it away.
So we're standing in someone's domicile, their house, as the landlord, and I call and I say, I've got an open bag of marijuana, I've got a pipe, I've got meth, and I'm told to throw it away. I'm supposed, that doesn't make any sense. That's illegal substance.
Yeah, I agree.
And
That's
you'd be
what it is.
responding to a complaint by the property owner.
Okay,
So why don't I get an officer there to put them under arrest, get them out of there, get a police report so I can go to court?
Are they not legally in possession of it, chief? I don't know. I don't know how.
well, they're not. I mean, Doug, help me out here, but, I think
Doug,
there's
yeah,
Difference
a
between,
privacy
I heard
issue.
paraphernalia and I heard meth and marijuana in that same, did we go from just paraphernalia to
Whatever it be, sure, I mean,
Well, for it to be drug paraphernalia to be a crime, there has to be evidence of residue. So a marijuana pipe in and of itself isn't
Right.
a crime, but if there's evidence of marijuana in it, then it's drug
there's a
paraphernalia.
bag sitting
Yeah.
there?
But I think I'll say circumstances could change my answer. Let's say, for this example, one person lives in this apartment, and you're inspecting, and that's all out on the table. I would think, again, for example, if you take pictures and you sign an affidavit that you were in doing this and this is what you saw, you know, that might be grounds for we'll call a criminal search warrant. Go get the search warrant, find it, question the person. They could admit or deny it. They could say, well, I had a friend over here last night, they left it there, I didn't know what it was, didn't want to touch it. But they might admit it. So if 6 people live in there, then it gets a little more complicated, because then it could be any one of them, and we know it's somebody's.
So there's not a difference between
That in a car.
a pipe and a bag of marijuana? I don't know, I'm at.
Well, the
When he
marijuana
said
would
meth,
be,
I don't know what meth is, but I know it's not good, but
yeah,
if he sees that sitting there, I mean, that should be automatic.
those are different levels of drugs, that different levels of punishment. Marijuana's pretty low, you know, then you go up the ladder, different levels
I
turn
don't
into
care what
aggravated.
drug it is. if
And the
it's-
quantities come into
if
play.
there's- Okay.
Yeah, let's say he finds a scale and a bunch of baggies, somebody's actually, you know,
not yet.
weighing it out and doing, then it's then it's distribution, but, you know, I understand where the chief's coming from. You know, criminals are a lot of times pretty stupid, though. My dad was a state trooper and stopped a guy for speeding, and he's in the car with my dad dad's writing him a ticket, he reaches his pocket and puts a bag of marijuana in the dash, says, well, you'll probably find it anyway. So sometimes people admit things against their best interest.
Well, look at the guy with the dead body with him. Everybody heard about that.
Yeah.
So,
So,
the chief, what you're saying is, you could come to these buildings, but you technically won't be able to, all you could do is write a report that you came there
If
and,
you're wanting to report that we came and, yeah, we can do that. Has an officer, you said an officer arrived there and said, they couldn't do anything.
Told over the phone, just pick it up and throw it away.
Is something that you had a resident, or it was occupied by a tenant?
I found it outside in alleys, I found it, in rental units.
With somebody in there, or were you cleaning it out?
No, with them there, in possession
Still
of
there.
it, still a tenant. Yeah, and I was just told to pick it up and throw it away.
Still confused, are we,
Okay.
I mean, I can't get over this, the difference between a paraphernalia, which I'm gonna,
it's just what he
Consider
said.
pipe,
If I had this,
football.
it's a pen, but if I took the cap off and started smoking marijuana, I had marijuana shot right there.
but if I
In
see a
itself,
bag,
that was a
if I see a
marijuana.
bag of marijuana there, I mean.
That makes
that's
this thing drug paraphernalia, otherwise that's
Okay.
just a pen.
But if I find, I mean, I can't call the police and they wouldn't be out there right away, and
I think, one, if you are cleaning an apartment where nobody lives anymore and you find it, that gets more difficult.
Right.
But if you're looking
Yes,
at an
I
apartment.
understand that.
Yeah.
I'm glad the tenant's gone in that case.
Right?
But
Yeah,
if
because
it's
I found
my
why they're
tenant,
gone.
when I walk in
Yeah.
and I see what I consider drugs, which I would say is a bag of marijuana, and I report that, and nobody's gonna do anything about it,
So Matt, riddle me this. So you said you need a report to get these people out, right? So you call the police and they say, hey, I saw this bag of marijuana, I was in there doing an inspection. And by the time you get there, the marijuana disappears.
Yeah,
And then what?
then I have nothing.
You have
Yeah.
nothing. So
Then you can't get them out.
And that's just the thing, like you walk into an apartment building and you smell marijuana, I don't care which door, you have now a right to go in and go to any of the doors and look for that stuff. Otherwise, I can't get them out. I can have all the tenants sign affidavits, we've tried this, sign affidavits, they know this person, the smoke smells coming from their room. I cannot get them out. So it makes it harder to get, if you're gonna have some type of code and some type of enforcement there, something that benefits the landlords as well, would go a lot further.
I'll check into your comment about that, Chris. But, like I said, if nobody's there, I'm
not talking- no, no,
commenting about if there's nobody there, like you're cleaning it out, you're finding this stuff. Yeah, we're gonna tell you to just throw it away.
But that's not what I'm talking
that's
about.
not what he's saying. He's saying an occupied rental.
I'll check into that.
That would be great.
So,
I would
'cause,
welcome
yeah,
that
they
law.
should, they should be responding to that.
What about the smell of the marijuana then in the fourplex for a young man down here?
If it's
he
in the
smells
common
it-
area, without, you know what I'm saying, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it's a common area, it's gonna be hard to,
You can't go knock on all four doors, it's just a fourplex.
well, yeah,
I think you
we knock and talk, but,
That happened with the building I used to own, actually, it was upstairs, old downtown building, 2 apartments, young lady, I knew she was smoking a lot of pot and selling it. And, yeah, in their old apartment, so gap under the wood doors, you know, and anyway, police officer went up there, knocked on the door. Came and opened the door, and there was smoke everywhere, and the officer's like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I didn't know it was you, well, clearly you didn't, and, you know. And-
your other
Yeah.
tenants would really, wouldn't they rat them out? And you wouldn't have 4 tenants that would all stick together on that, I
No.
would think.
No, but what he's saying is you can't get the bad tenant out if you have 3 good tenants without a police report.
Without,
You should be able to identify which one it is.
correct, but
Pretty
without
easily.
having,
A police
Somebody else.
report.
and we put clauses in there that if you get any type of police action against you, it violates the lease, checking our end of the lease agreement to get them out. But I gotta get that part done. And it's obviously, it's a lesser crime than, I wish I could smell meth in there. But it's still, if you're gonna have some type of rental code enforcement, something that benefits the landlords will go a long way. Cause you're right, 90% of us are gonna try to get everything else fixed up, cause it's our livelihood.
Right, right.
I can't believe that the police can't go into a place that they know. If you're telling somebody that there's drugs in there, I can't believe that our police can't go in there and do something about it right now, today, without a code or, I mean, that's the law. It's illegal in Iowa.
there's a lot of people that do illegal stuff behind closed doors.
I understand, but
Can't
it's
just
not
keep them
behind
going.
closed doors because we have
Identified.
it's been identified by,
You still can't kick that door in.
I'm not saying you kick it in, he can open it up for you.
But I'm in there for inspections.
So, I just can't believe
It's a
that's not
scheduled
happening already.
inspection.
We're worried about smoke detectors and we got people smoking pot. Well, guess where that smoke detector's at? Not on the wall anymore, on the ceiling. So,
And in a multifamily unit.
Chris, I'll
they all
look- I'll
have
look into
installed
that.
smoke detectors.
One.
Yeah,
I would appreciate that, even if it just opened a dialogue so we could
We've
have some.
always communicated, and we've always helped you, with your, tenants, as far as trespass, and all that stuff, so I guess I'm not understanding why this is coming out right now. I wish
Well-
you'd come to my office and and said something.
And that might be a
Not
good
at a
idea.
I'll be there, tomorrow. Are you in tomorrow?
Yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely.
I will be here tomorrow.
So, and
Set up a time.
And same thing with you, Matt. I mean, if there's an issue, come talk to me. I can't fix stuff if I don't know. He didn't talk to me.
And that's the assumption when we call others.
But,
That it
like
gets
I
to the
said,
top.
if it's an unoccupied and you're just cleaning up the property, throw it away.
We understand that
Absolutely.
part, chief.
But this
You're-
This is
occupied
occupied
unit.
space that I guess I'm
Yeah,
particularly
Yeah,
concerned
so come in
about.
tomorrow and talk to me.
Excellent. Is
We can go back to this rental thing.
Well, till you talk about self-policing, and I've had to do that. I've smelled it. We sent a letter to all the tenants, not knowing which one, just saying, we smell it again, we're gonna have the sheriff come in, and took care of the problem. I don't know if the sheriff would have really done it, but, or did, but we made the police, the threat of doing it, and it worked. Just saying.
Yours just ignored it and used it as a,
Yeah, we posted it on every door.
used
We
it to roll up
taped
their
it.
next joint.
We taped it up on every door.
Maybe we got lucky.
Yeah.
So-
I like something like you were.
My request is, let's dumb it down. So,
well, another gathering of the landlord group, probably, talk things over.
So, let's go one step farther.
complicated code
Is there
is
going to be a
complicated to
fee for,
enforce.
you want a fee for registering our rental units?
I don't think we've got that far yet.
Well,
I,
we need to get that far so that we can talk amongst, as a group, where we're going with this thing.
what did we
And
charge
what's
for,
the inspection fee gonna be when Blake comes?
did we charge anything for the food trucks?
$25, Mr. Mayor.
Is that a year?
Yes.
Annual.
Is that killer?
As long as it's not each address.
Yeah, that's up
Remember-
fast.
What's
Yeah,
that?
it's up fast.
Yeah. As long as it's not each address, because we have a number of people in this room that have
Yeah,
3 and 4 and 5 plexes, and that would be a detriment to them. First
To the
house,
tenant,
I got
John.
duplexes.
To the tenant.
Yeah.
The tenant will be paying this, so these little
Yeah.
ladies are gonna pay this.
Does there need to be a fee for registering?
I don't know that there needs to be. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because this original code was fee
My-
for this, fee for that, fee for
And
this.
that's again, that
penalty,
makes it
and-
overly complicated and
Right.
it makes it detriment to everybody.
I think the fee is meant to offset the cost of your code enforcement.
Yes.
but I don't see the point in, since the city is doing this ordinance, I don't see the point in it when tenants change, a charge for that service, for him to come with stuff.
It would, and I understand what you're saying, but once again, I feel for my fellow
He's saying
landlords who
he
doesn't.
No, I said I don't
Doesn't
agree
think-
with having a charge for
Oh,
Blake to come.
okay, I got
Yeah,
it. Doesn't, okay.
your side, John.
Well, it's so hard to believe.
I think that personally, the taxes we generate should do that. I mean, that's how he's paid anyhow. And also paid through other things. Yeah.
Excellent.
Unregistered rentals is sometimes an issue in cities where you have a rental code that requires registration fee or not. What do you do with ones that don't register?
Again,
Shut it.
hopefully it's a self-policing thing that,
We could register all of our rental
Yeah.
codes, our rental buildings, and someone who is renting that is not on that should probably be chastised just a little bit. Hey, get your ass down there and get on the list. I speak that way, sir, because that's how people in that situation need to be talked to, and you well know. But
And I think with the more stringent code, you have some pushback, where people wouldn't wanna register because they wouldn't wanna comply. And what you could see happening then is instead of registering it, they quote unquote sell it on contract.
yeah,
It's already been brought up.
Yeah, so, there's, people get very creative. They sell it on contract, but they never run or record the contract, because if they record the contract, then they gotta legally forfeit the contract. Instead, they'd like just rip it up and throw it away if the tenant doesn't work out. So, I don't know that would be a problem here, but that can happen.
But would it be a burden for all the landlords to list the properties they own, turn them into the city,
I can imagine that'd be a problem.
and that way we know who owns what?
Do you, what do you think? I mean,
it already reverts back to the landlord.
Well,
doesn't seem
I
like a
know,
problem.
but this way there'd be a
Is that much,
list.
too much to ask?
Well, it's a
Relatively
list
probably.
to
Well,
look at.
One
But
benefit to
they're not.
landlord, Waterloo does the same thing, and if there's a code enforcement action like a junk vehicle, they go after the tenant, not the landlord. Whereas if it's not registered in your name, they go after the landlord.
And I think we addressed this at some point.
Yeah, we did.
That we're supposed to, the whole certified, gosh, are you still on that? And we're supposed to go with certified letter, knock on the door, if we don't get it, then it goes back to the landlord.
Yep.
Maybe you weren't on there then. So, I know we've had that same discussion
Yeah.
about stuff.
Other cities do go after the property owner.
Yep, that's on our
After-
First Avenue, and then if we
after all
don't get
the
any
other avenues
results,
have
then we go contact the landlord.
Yeah, if it's junk in the yard and junk vehicles, I'd say the first step I usually see is the tenant, if it's their stuff.
Yep.
And if that doesn't work, then it does go to landlord, because ultimately they're responsible for that property. And usually your leases are gonna say you can't do that stuff. So, then the city goes, landlord, you take care of your tenant.
We got 6 minutes. Do you think we need to proceed on the survey thing at all if we have a landlord meeting on some type of safety checklist?
I'm good with the dumbed down version. You know, convince everybody else of that on the committee, Bethany, which I think she's on board with it too. I know I'm gonna get my ass chewed by chief here at the end of this, but that's okay.
Oh, not
No,
too
it's
much.
your guys',
You are.
it's your guys'
I
deal.
would also,
Totally.
for what it's worth, I would also like to say that if there's any modifications to this going forward, if the council sees need to change it, it would require basically a revisit of the
Yeah,
board and.
yeah, and we do that on all things.
And that's the scariest red herring out there is we get this approved and then now you can do whatever you want.
No.
That's why I wanna keep it as simple as this, because
No, that's,
if I add all of a sudden, well, sorry, John, I'm gonna come inspect every blade of grass in your yard,
Come on
I'm gonna
over.
put that on there as
I
an
feel like
amendment.
that's happening
Nah.
once in a while now anyway.
Yeah, we'll keep it, if the council passes something, the councils change all the time. You get different people with different mindsets, but if they wanna change it, they have to do an ordinance. It's supposed to be 3 readings. Can waive that requirement, do it quick in 1. Something like this shouldn't be that way probably, but
Doesn't happen here very often.
I'm not a big supporter of
Actually,
waiving
I'll just
either.
get rid of
But,
that.
anyway, it's just, hate to say it, but that's what people gotta watch. You know, you gotta pay attention to the agendas and see what's going on.
well, I think this, I don't know. If we have to have another meeting before we do actually write something up and make sure everybody's on board with everything. You guys have your meeting with your people, see if everybody's on board with that, and then we come back next month and revisit this again, then we can write something up maybe.
Yeah, so I'd rather have this resolved by the end of the year other than the 4 years I think it's gonna take if we keep going down this
Right,
89-page frickin' ordinance
Right.
that we had in front of us, so.
No,
And that may want Blake to get,
Yeah, Blake,
get you a 2-pager. Like get a 2-page and I'll look at my insurance one of their
see,
their
that's a good
requirements.
starting point. Take that to whatever you guys gotta do and go with it. Hell, you guys know what you need. Everybody wants to keep their lease renters, that's, you know, just plain simple facts. So,
So,
we just want them all to be safe.
we have somebody move out, new tenants come in, Blake's gonna come in and look at it.
after you get
After
your
you've
chance
gone
to
through,
clean
it, you've checked
everything
all the
up.
marks, say, hey,
Okay, so,
Blake, you come
Can we
sign
just
off.
get
on it.
together and come up
we've
with
got
a
a water
proposal?
heater that's 5 years old, 10 years old, pick the number, and it's working, but it may not be up to code. Is that gonna have to be corrected? Or is it
Well,
gonna
if
be
you-
okay because
If you're gonna have
it's,
to replace it,
I'm talking, it's working,
Well-
everything's fine, but it
Well,
may
it
not
depends,
be.
a lot of it depends on the way it's piped, the way it's vented. Because if
Yeah.
you would have the gas company come in and if it's vented wrong, the gas company shuts your gas off anyway.
I'm hoping, I don't think I have anything like that.
No,
I'm just throwing out
I
things
mean, I went
that,
into a house here in town with a brand new water heater in it back in February. No permit was pulled when it was put in, and I was looking at it with my son, because he was thinking about buying it, and the vent was totally illegal. They put a tall water heater where a short water heater should have been, so it came out of the water heater, went down like this, over, and back up.
as with a lot of things, when you go to improve it, it needs to be brought up to code.
absolutely.
So if you gotta change that
100%.
water heater, you're gonna put
I'm
a
just-
permit,
I'm
and then it
just
has to be piped to code.
You know, I just don't want
That's
to get
my
into a
opinion.
situation where, okay, oh, now the plumbing's not vented quite right, or this, you know, and if
Well,
a water
the-
heater vent
If
absolutely
you're
needs to
doing
be
like
right.
John does, if you're doing like John does when he buys a house, guts it,
Right,
everything has to be brought up to code.
that's fine, I'm talking just, when things are working.
Sorry, John.
When things are working, I don't wanna have.
Right, but if,
Or a $3,000 bill because.
as
it's
long as you're
up
not
to
gonna
code.
put in a new bathroom or something,
Right,
all the venting and everything stays grandfathered in.
yep.
But
And
if you're gonna do a major change in there, then you have to bring it up to code.
Absolutely.
Like I said, when the first time we all met, and I said I don't have any skin in the game, the only people I know whose rentals they are John's, Matt's, and Kevin's. I don't know where else you guys got rentals, I have no idea. That's what I mean, I don't know, so.
On your water heater example though, if Blake went in at the time to go do an inspection and he found what I call an unsafe venting.
For Brian's, I'm sorry.
That would be something that would need
I
to
just called him. Right.
be, it wouldn't be big enough, the unsafe.
Right. If he finds something,
If it's,
yeah.
And gas, if it's gas.
You can beat me upside the
the
head
line
later,
is gonna
Brian.
nail you.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I just don't wanna have things escalate down
Well-
all of a sudden.
Stay away from complete remodel jobs,
Yeah.
they really escalate.
Well, even
So
like if
I
they
gotta
looked in
wrap
your-
this up, I got the
looked in your
homework coming
breaker
in here in
panel.
about 3 minutes. So.
The new breakers required are crazy.
So can we come up
expensive.
with
You would
a-
wanna say, well, you gotta bring this up to code.
Right.
Hey, bud, can we come up with like
There's a lot
a
of fuses in town.
proposal,
Too.
all of us together, as far as like what we would like in the code, and then your guys' party, they can get together, and that way
Yeah,
everybody.
absolutely. We can all get back together once you come up with it. We can
Okay.
discuss it as a group.
Yeah, propose it.
We'll meet in November again sometime, or?
I don't
Let's
know.
go, let's
Let's
go
give
on.
us a little time.
If it doesn't happen
Once
this
we-
year, but at least it's
You
not
wanna go
next year.
January?
Yeah,
You wanna go January?
you bet, because if everybody, well, November, December, I don't like to beat up on anybody in November, December. January, it's a new year, baby.
There you
Here's
go.
our free bid.
You guys come up with a list, email it to Bethany. She'll spread it out amongst us.
And same with Blake, like if he's got, here are
Yeah.
13 hard items, that'll jumpstart the process.
13, Bud had 3 or 4.
That's even better yet.
Yeah, it's
Short.
quite a bit more.
So, yeah, I hope you guys aren't upset that I kind of
No. I love
wiped it out.
I'm glad you sat down.
I'm thinking about voting for you.
I wouldn't want to ask too much, John.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm gonna go find another house and do that.
So is everybody getting a little bit better feeling about this instead of
Yeah,
where it started?
Making progress.
it's all right.
It's new.
I don't like this stuff.
I don't like new stuff either, but
We've had a lot of new stuff thrown at us.
Yeah. Let's get together soon.
Yeah, question.
Get some ideas down.